Nevada is the driest state in the Union, and as you drive along the interstates and highways, it's hard to imagine a place more arid and desolate. But perhaps the best kept secret about this state is that life exists here, if you know where to look. In between the canyons and the valleys, springs bubble up from beneath the earth, and streams wind their way through the dry hills. In the springtime, the snow melt trickles down the draws into the river channels, a complex network of veins and arteries stretching across the state. Like blood, the water is necessary for life. All wildlife, from the tree and willows to the deer and fowl, congregate around these sources. And it is here, on the banks of the North Fork and Humboldt rivers, that our family has raised cattle for 5 generations. My grandfather and his brother were the first to begin intensive land-leveling projects on the ranch. They saw the potential for increased hay production by utilizing every drop of water to its fullest, both by increasing the total number of acres of arable land and by preventing the waste and loss of water. Leveled fields distribute the water more evenly, which results in a more consistent hay crop with greater tonnage per acre. Leveling the fields removes any low elevations that would normally intercept and divert water, while also eliminating high areas that would not be able to be irrigated otherwise. Today, my cousin, Brent Glazer, spearheads the land development projects on the ranch. As a break between finishing college and pursuing my own career, I signed on this fall to help him tackle some unproductive areas of our ranch. The first step in the process is preparing the soil. A ripper is used to break through the sod, with 2 or 3 passes to prime the soil. Next, the disc plow pulverizes the sod into smaller pieces. The finer the soil, the easier it is to move and spread. We use a laser transmitter mounted on a mast platform that can be adjusted to change the pitch of the beam. The laser receivers mounted on the scrapers we use pick up the beam from the transmitter. An electronic control unit in the cab regulates hydraulic valves which determine the height of the scraper blade. What took pioneers and settlers months or years to complete can now be done in weeks, even days. There is a lot of time to think when riding in the cab for 11 hours a day, making passes back and forth over the same ground. 10 years ago, on the hay crew, there were fields and places on the ranch that were miserable to work in. Willows consumed most of the fields, dulling sickles and causing flat tires. Sloughs made it difficult to traverse fields and resulted in tractors getting stuck. These places were absolute nightmares to work in, yet they were also the most beautiful. When the day is done, and Brent and I look back on the progress we've made, we talk about how miserable haying used to be in a particular spot. We recount stories of getting stuck or breaking down, and cursing Mother Nature. She was our greatest rival. But this fall, as I put the finishing touches on 180 acres of land that has been cleared and developed, I realized that this rival has been beaten, and can no longer compete with modern machinery. 100 years ago, a river channel, hill, or slough was as immovable as a mountain. Now, I don't even have to break a sweat to remove these obstacles, and I can do it in less than a few hours. And in looking back over what I've done, I realized that nature was never a rival at all, but an involuntary adversary drawn into a competition that only existed to Brent and me. Nature has never shown any more cruelty or generosity to us than she has to the rabbit or the elk. She is anything if not fair, having remained unchanging for millennia. It is easy for nostalgia and doubt to creep into the mind, but it's more important to concentrate on the goal at hand, producing more for less. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations estimates that we will need to increase food production by 70% by 2050 in order to feed our growing population. Through land intensification projects, like our land leveling endeavors, we are able to reduce water usage while simultaneously increasing yields. In a landscape unsuitable for the efficient production of crops, we can responsibly graze the range and convert cellulose into energy we can consume. If this means that fewer ecosystems will be clear-cut for pasture or for fields elsewhere in the world, we are moving in the right direction. It would seem unlikely in such a harsh place, but perhaps we are better suited to cohabit and coexist with nature here than anywhere else. It is when Brent and I look back at the end of the year, and we have trouble remembering what the land used to look like, that I become afraid. Brent jokes, "No one will ever know what this once looked like. They will always think it was leveled and green." I understand progress is important, but perhaps it is more important to move forward with an understanding of the hundreds of thousands of years that created the landscape we know, an appreciation for the labor that our ancestors invested in these regions. Today, we try and reconcile progress and conservation by leaving stands of willows to prevent erosion and to provide shelter for wildlife. We leave rings of cattail sloughs for nesting heron and other waterfowl. We are transitioning from diesel-driven pumps to solar arrays on our stock troughs. I've looked back on the work that my predecessors invested in the ranch, and the impact those projects have had on subsequent generations. Now, we are adopting new management strategies, so that when generations to come look back on our work, they might be proud of the legacy we left behind.